also just let me know what they are. That'd be great.
Okay.
So hi, everyone who is on YouTube. We're going to get started in about 60 seconds.
YouTube live hasn't started. I'll tell you when it goes live.
That sounds good. I'm just
This
always ready
went.
for any questions.
It says meeting is now streaming, but Uncle, I can keep track of the YouTube questions.
All right, I think we've hit 4:05, so we can get started if that works for everybody. Cool. Well, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about voter registration and voter rights. We're also going to be talking a little bit about messaging, and I'm going to try and do a bit of a recap from the voter registration 101 workshop that I did last week, 2 weeks ago, a while ago, whenever I saw you all last. And so a little bit of recap. So if you missed any of that, not a problem. We're going to cover a little bit of that today. So I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. And so my name is Pratik Das. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I do a lot of this work as a living of registering people to vote and mobilizing them to vote. Can I ask a quick question? Can you all see your faces on like the right corner here or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to try and hide you all. So that
way... not on your screen. Sorry.
Oh, perfect. Cool. So yeah, I think that is super helpful. So I'm going to just try and walk through this. I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you all. So I really ask that you all stop me, interrupt me, ask questions. For those of you on YouTube, ask questions, and those of you monitoring YouTube, just interrupt me wherever you need to. So couple of things that's going to happen is that there's a few ground rules. So one is be present. I ask that if you are watching this presentation that, to really focus on it and to pay attention there. To take care of yourself. If you obviously need to use the restroom, get some water, please do that. Step up and step back. What that basically means is that if you are a person who is like me, who likes to talk a lot, to challenge yourself not to speak as much. And then step back is if you're a person that doesn't talk as often, to challenge yourself to step up and speak, really to try and do that. Number 4 is assume best intentions. A lot of people are coming to this space learning something new, and they may ask some questions that you might feel like, oh, well, everyone knows that. Why are you asking that? That's dumb. That's stupid. Assume best intentions. People are really trying to learn here, and so give them that space to do that. This is a nonpartisan space, so we are not going to be talking about any parties. We're not going to be talking about any candidates. We're really just talking about the methodology of voting and to bring people out to vote. And the last thing is just to save time, avoid redundancy. If someone has said something already, maybe instead of getting on the mic and trying to say it again, maybe use the chat and say something like, I totally agree, I second that, give them a thumbs up. So feel free to use that as well. So any questions about those ground rules, or does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Going once, going twice, and we're moving on. Cool. So Icebreaker, really quickly, what motivates our communities, whether that is 40 communities, whether that's Indian Americans, whether that is youth, whatever community means to you, what motivates our communities to vote? Now we'll open it up to the floor. Don't worry, everyone. I can sit here in awkward silence all day. Happily, I will sit in silence until someone gives an answer. So someone give me something. What motivates our communities to vote?
Immigration issues.
Immigration issues. Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, we want our voice heard, right? The concerns that we care for, I them to be addressed. Want somebody taking care of.
Yeah, we want to feel represented. We want to feel that our community is represented. That's a great one too. Take one or two more.
And I think also coming from the, being a minority group in US, we want to have a solid voice that, yes, we are equally treated and we are not being overlooked.
Yeah, that's a great one, that our voice is being heard and that we're not being underrepresented or overlooked. Great point, great point. Someone give me one more. We had immigration and underrepresentation. What else? Probably someone who hasn't spoken yet.
Just
What
like
if someone is
community issues. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deepak.
no, I was thinking, what if someone is new and he's now ready to vote, right? The excitement to vote.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. It's like your first time voting, or someone just became a citizen and they're going to be voting for the first time. Great one. Rennie, what were you going to say?
Just like issues within our community, schools, all of that stuff.
Yeah, education, school, immigration was mentioned earlier, all kinds of different issues that affect our communities. Thank you all for sharing that. Awesome. So we're going to move on to the next piece. There are 3 pieces of voter engagement. There's voter registration, there's voter education, and voter mobilization. So first, we're going to start with who can vote. So you must be a citizen of the United States. You have to be at least 18 years old or on or before election day. So those of you who might be 17 that are watching this and you turn 18 before November 3rd, you can register to vote before your voter registration deadline, and you'll be able to vote if you turn 18 before November 3rd. You have to be a resident of the state that you are voting in. So obviously I live in Tennessee. I cannot go vote in California. You are not incarcerated or in prison or jail for a felony conviction under the laws of the state or another state or the United States. And so I want to stop there for a second, because some people might be thinking, well, what's a felony? What's not a felony? I don't know. Is it DUI? Is a misdemeanor and whatever? It's not your job to be a lawyer. If you have any questions about, like, can this person vote because of something that happened in their past? You can always call your election commission in your county, and they'll be able to answer that question for you. You've not been declared incompetent for voting purposes by a probate court, and you have not been permanently disenfranchised for violating election laws. So this last one is really important, especially for our communities, because where that gets us, especially Indian Americans and stuff, is that some people might register to vote before they're citizens. And so if you register to vote, a lot of people think they can register to vote before they've taken their oath ceremony, and they might see everyone around them registering to vote, but then they register to vote before they're citizens, before they've taken their oath ceremony, and that can be detrimental not only for their voting purposes but for their citizenship application. So it takes 5 years to become a U.S. citizen. What can happen is that if they catch you, you register to vote after you've done, you've been doing this for 5-6 years. What could happen is that you end up having to restart your citizenship application all over again, because you have been deemed as not having high moral character. And so just wanted to flag that, especially for Indian American communities. Like that's a big one right there, to make sure that people are registering to vote after they are citizens. So any questions there before I move on to the next? Going once, going twice, to the next slide. Cool. So how can we register to vote? And so it varies from state to state, but I showed this website last time for the one-on-one. I'm going to show this again. This is a cool website made by, it's called newamericanvoters2020.org. If somebody wouldn't mind punching that into the chat, that would be awesome and really helpful for me. But I'll use Tennessee as an example. You can see, if you click on a state, you'll have your voter registration deadline, when it is. Tennessee does not have same-day voter registration. So that means that I have to register by the 5th, even though the election is November 3rd. I can't like walk in and just do same day voter registration. So some states, like I think California, does have same day voter registration where you can walk in and register to vote on the same day that you're planning to vote. Not every state has that. They have a link for where to go register to vote. They talk about absentee. If you need to vote absentee, how to do that, and how to request your absentee ballot if you're planning to do that. And you know, where to go if you have more, if you need more information, what organization to reach out to. So every single state kind of has this. So I'll use, can somebody unmute and tell me what state people are from?
Georgia.
Georgia. So we'll go to Georgia. Georgia does not have same-day voter registration, similar to Tennessee. It's October 5th, 2020. Many states in the South have very early voter registration deadlines, have to be about a month before. They have the link to go register to vote if you need to. Georgia offers the option to vote by mail, and you don't need an excuse to request a ballot. So Georgia's got a little bit of a different thing than Tennessee. So Georgia says that you can vote by mail or you can send in an absentee ballot, and you don't need an excuse. You can just say, I want to, you know, I don't feel safe. I want to vote by mail. I'm going to vote by mail. And it has the link to do that. In Tennessee, you'll see that you do need an excuse to request a ballot. In Tennessee, you have to say, like, I have COVID, or I'm afraid that I have some sort of ailment. I have asthma, and I'm afraid that I might get COVID if I go to the polls. You have to prove that before going out and voting. And so Georgia has that. And then it has the Georgia Secretary of State's website if you have any more questions. So I'm going to make sure that this is available. The slideshow will be available for everyone. And so that way you can have this information for all 50 states in the United States. Any questions about this map before I move on?
We'll have a link to the map on the youth site once it goes live too.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So cool. I'm going to go to the next slide. So voter education. This is just what seats are up for election. So those of you who are in the 101, you cannot cheat because I've already done this. And so try your best to hold back and let some of the new people talk about this. But we obviously have a federal election. We have President, Senate, and House of Representatives. Obviously, everyone knows about the president. Feels like it is the presidential race is on TV every single day. And same with the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate has some very contested races this year, and so do some House of Representatives. Can somebody give me how many senators represent each state?
2.
2. That is exactly right. 2 senators represent the whole state and every part of the state. And for your House of Representatives, it depends on how many people live in that state. So Tennessee, for example, has 9 House of Representatives, and they are split up by a certain amount of area. So there's a representative that takes the far east Tennessee, then there's another representative that takes kind of the east middle Tennessee, then there's a middle Tennessee representative, then there's a west middle, and it's cut up in 9 different ways. And so different states have a different number of representatives, but it's good to remember the senator represents the whole state. The House of Representatives, they only represent a sliver of your state. So when you are reaching out to your House of Representatives or asking them to vote, they're voting for the people that live in their little sliver. They don't care about the whole state. They only care about the people that live in the sliver of their state. So I just wanted to name that so that people know the difference. We're going to move to the state. Every state has a governor, which is like the president of the state. And every state has a state senate and a state house. The same way so state senate is usually cut up by different chunks of land, and state house is also same thing, cut up by different chunks of land. And then with local cities have mayors, have city councils, have school boards, and also has sheriff. Let's not forget sheriff. I forgot to put that on there, but many cities have different sheriffs and they do different things as well. And so it's really important to remember that federal, state, and local actually all have different purposes here. And so I'll give an example that I gave last time. I'm trying to think of one that I took off the list. So we'll use the example of, actually, we'll just do this. We're going to practice. We're going to practice really quickly on who does what. So I want you all to practice which of these different things. So which of these different things, like does it federal government, state government, or local government that manages each one of these? So I'm going to start with cybersecurity. So the safety of your internet. Does anyone think that is federal, local, or state?
Federal.
Federal, good guess, good guess. It is not federal. So local or state? Someone take a stab at it. It's 50-50 shot.
Local?
It's not local, it's actually state. Your state actually determines whether your cybersecurity. They make those decisions all across. And so people don't know that. People think it's federal because we look at Facebook and we look at all these other people that are talking to these federal judges, but it's actually your state that makes those decisions. Let's do driver's license for undocumented community members. So if I want to give someone who is undocumented a driver's license, who makes that decision? Is that on a federal, state, or like a citywide or local level?
State.
State is a good guess. That is not correct.
Local?
So local. So it's actually your local cities that decide whether folks get driver's licenses or not. Now, Deepak Uncle, you mentioned state, which is really important because the state does have the power to do what's called preemption. And so what the state can do is it can't say we're giving driver's licenses to all undocumented people in the state, but what they can do is say, we're gonna pass a law that says no cities can give driver's licenses to citizens or to undocumented folks. So the state can stop laws from happening, but they can't grant laws to different cities. So you are on the right path in that way, that the state has more power than local, but usually it's local that makes this call. Let's do foreign relations. This one should be easy. Federal, local, or state?
Federal.
Federal.
Federal, easy. Everyone gets that. That makes a lot of sense. ICE's collaboration with police department. Does ICE get to talk to police? Think about, I'm going back here and think about these cities. So who is in charge of police and who's going to make that decision about whether they talk to ICE or not? So is that federal, state, or local?
Local.
Local. Local's right, because your sheriff is making that decision. Those of you in 101, you'll remember this one. Textbook in schools. This is a trick question. I'm gonna take a stab at it.
This is a school district. No, let me probably state.
You're actually on the right track. So in 30 different states across the United States, it is a state issue. In 20 other states, it's local. And so various school boards, in some states, it's the school board that decides that decision. But in the South, usually in Southern areas, they're the ones who make that decision. So you're correct on both accounts. Let's think about healthcare, Medicaid, things like that.
Federal?
Federal's right. And then state also has a little bit of a hand on it too. So, and so federal obviously decides how much money is going into the state. The state then decides how to distribute that money. So great one. And then last one is voter rights. So who makes the laws on how people vote?
State?
States. Yeah, state's correct. It's all your voter laws are always state-based. So, which we saw from that map. So great job, everybody. You guys did a good job. You kind of started slow in the beginning, but you guys started hitting them as you got there. So that's really, really awesome job. So does anyone have any questions about any of this before I keep moving? Going once, going twice. On to the next. So the next thing I just wanted to talk about was early voting. So those of you who are in 101, feel free to answer this, but who knows what early voting is? And if you do know, please share with the class.
It's when you vote early.
Wow, nothing like defining the terminology by using the words in the term. Wow, I am hurt that the teacher is the one who did that. That's painful. You are correct. It is when you vote earlier than election day. What are the advantages of early voting?
Especially during the pandemic, you don't have to go stand in line. Don't have to.
You don't have to stand in line.
Be
That's a great one.
in other people's space.
Yeah, you don't have to be in other people's space. That's exactly right. What else? What else makes early voting awesome about it? Think about location and your polling location.
You can go to any location rather than your assigned one.
That's right. That's a great one, is that you can, usually most states that have early voting, you can actually go and vote in, they'll give you a series of different polling locations. Now, on election day, everyone has to go vote at their particular polling location. It's usually 5 or 6 minutes away from their home. But on early voting for many states, what happens is that, suppose I go to work and work is 30 minutes away, and then I want to drive home, I can say, look, I want to vote on the way home. I can, this polling place is on my way home. I can go vote there. Let me do that instead of having to go on November 3rd and vote with a bunch of people in my face. So my recommendation, a lot of people who don't, like especially Tennessee, we don't have a great vote by mail system. I would also tell folks right now is that, the post office during election time is going to be crazy and insane, and you just won't know whether your vote is going to count or not. And so if you are not, if you are not kind of susceptible to COVID, as in if you don't have a pre-existing condition, pre-existing condition, those of you on YouTube, I promise I speak good English. Something is just going a little haywire right now. But I would recommend that on the first day of early voting or the second day of early voting, that's when you go vote. Put your mask on, go vote. It'll probably just be you and maybe one other person in the building and your polling people, and that's it. So the earlier you go early vote, the better it is. People really stack up the polls on the last days of early voting. So I like to call it early voting, but if you want to go early vote and do it early, you will probably be able to avoid a lot of people, and you'll be in and out very quickly, and you'll have your I voted sticker, and you'll be able to put it up on social media, and everyone will be jealous that you are a voter. So any questions about early voting before I move on?
Another thing that I think is beneficial to, especially like doing your ballot at home, is you have your computer right there next to you, and so you can research everyone's points, because especially with like the local elections, I always get confused. So it's just really easy to have your research right next to you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you can't take a lot of your research into the polls. So I think that's a really important point to mention. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on. This is my last slide from 101. And so just so we can talk through this, but this is really important as why voting is important, and not only voting, but voting regularly is important. So what usually happens is if you are not a regular voter, and that includes if you're a first-time voter, if you're voting for the first time, what usually happens is that you are not deemed as what is called a high propensity voter. You're not a person that's a regular voter. And so what politicians are trying to do is they're not trying to talk to all voters. They're just trying to talk to people that vote often and get them to vote for them. So what happens is that if you are a low propensity voter or a first time voter, what will happen is campaigns don't make contact with you. They don't knock on your door. They don't call you. You don't get a piece of mail. And so therefore what happens with that is that people don't go vote because they don't have any contact or anything. They don't know that there's an election. And then if people don't go vote, you get labeled as an unlikely voter. And then campaigns, again, don't make any contact. And so that's why it's so important to be a regular voter. We see this a lot in local and state elections. Federal, usually, like this year, you're going to get a ton of mail. Everyone's going to get a lot of mail. Everyone's going to get a lot of stuff in there. But I guarantee you in 2021, your mailbox is probably going to be a little more empty than last year. And you won't even know that election may have passed you by. And so it's really important that you try and vote not only in presidential elections, but you have a history of voting over and over and over again. I'll give you all a good example, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can like kind of share this and really hammer it down. But you know, about 5 or 6 years ago, in Nashville, the Somali community were not regular voters. A lot of Somali community members live in Nashville. They weren't regular voters. And there was an organizer whose name was Mohammed Shukri who decided, like, we need to get these people to come vote. And so they started voting, and they voted in a local election that they had a big impact in. It encouraged people. People were excited to go vote. And so they voted again in the midterm, and then they voted in the next year, the following year, the third year, they voted in another local election. Then they voted in a presidential. Then they voted in local, and they kept doing that over and over and over again. And what ends up happening now is that when the Somali community decides when there's an election that's coming up, now politicians go to the Somali coffee shop every single time, and they say, hey, what do you all want so that, you know, your community will vote for me? And that's a sense of power, right? That's power that was built through voting. And so they said, look, we want, we want some of this textbooks and stuff. We want them in Somali. Like, we need some stuff for our Somali parents. And a lot of the school board and things like that, they started catering a lot to the Somali community. Nashville has the biggest Kurdish population in the world outside of the Middle East. So we have a huge Kurdish population. So the Kurdish community was like, whoa, 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 we got to start doing this too. So they started doing it. Now almost everything comes in Kurdish in various schools. That is a form of power that you have to build through consistent voting. It's not just voting once every 4 years during the presidential, it's voting consistently. That is so, so important. It's like going on a diet, right? If you like just go and fast, and you fast for 2 days because of puja, like, you're not going to lose weight. You got to stay consistent with it. You got to eat the celery and eat the carrots and avoid the Coke and stuff like that. That's the way that you're going to lose weight. So it's kind of the same mentality. It's all about discipline. And I guarantee you, consistently voting is way easier than going on a diet. I can tell you that. So those of you who've gone on a diet, if you've done that, you can do this. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Cool. Any questions about that process before I move on? Going once, going twice, back to my screen. All right. Next slide here. This is where the 202 begins. So those of you who missed the last one, this is where it's new information for everybody. So how do I deliver my message, right? Like, what do I say to people to get them to go out and vote? Like, we've all tried to do it. How do we get our friends to come out and do it? So I wanted to give you guys a couple of different guidelines. First thing, your story is your North Star. Why is it important for you and your community to go vote? If you tell your story, that is the most compelling way to get other people to go out and vote. And so we have this formula. It's called story of self, story of us, and story of now. And the way we do that is we tell our story. We talk about our story and why it's important. And then we talk about the story of us, like what's happening in this moment. And then the story of self, we talk about my story, the story of us, that I'm not the only person this is happening to. I'm not the only person that's in this issue. And then the story of now, building that urgency of like, oh, I need to go out and vote right in this moment. So I'll give you all an example. So I'll just use my story as an example. So I think that it is so important to vote because when I was in 8th grade after 9/11, I went to donate some money to the victims of 9/11. I was 14 years old, 13 years old, 8th grade. And I went to donate money to the victims of 9/11. And I remember when I brought my money to the teacher, she took my hand and she pushed it away to a 13-year-old boy and said, "Sweetie, we don't take money from terrorists." She said it right to my face. And it was very racist. It was the first time that I, as a young kid, had ever experienced racism in my life. And so I never want anyone who has the same color skin as me to ever experience that. I know I'm not the only person that has ever experienced anything like that, especially with the rhetoric that goes on in the presidential campaign, in the state level campaigns. It's not just one side. I think both sides really underrepresent our communities. And so therefore, in this moment, so that I can fight for young kids who are 13 and 14 years old, I have to vote right now. It's so important for me to go out and vote. So you'll notice I talked about my self story. I talked about what happened to me. I talked about the story of us. I'm not the only one that went through this. There's so many other people that got through it. And the story of now, like right now, I need to go out and vote. Does that make sense to everybody? I talked about all three kind of those phases. That message, your story, and many of you might be watching this thinking, well, I don't have a story. Oh, my story doesn't matter. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Every story matters, and it's so much more compelling when you touch on personal experiences to get people to do things versus trying to just give direction, right? You're not going to just do it. If you tell someone, hey, you need to go vote, it's not going to do you any good. But if you say, hey, this is what happened to me, your vote is, it's not just yours, it represents all of us. That is where you're going to get people. So that's kind of my methodology there. I really recommend you practice your story, write it down, do that, and then just keep repeating it to yourself. And that will really, once you get into the practice of saying it over and over again, it'll be really easy to help motivate people to go out and vote. Some other pieces that are important. You want to touch on people's identity versus giving them direction. So you don't want to say be a voter, or sorry, you do want to say be a voter. Hey, why don't you go be a voter versus go vote? You don't want to be giving someone a piece of direction. You want to say, hey, be a voter, be a part of this identity that I've built for myself, that I'm building for you, that you can build for yourself, and we can be a part of something bigger. So really hammering down, tell people to be a voter, don't tell them to go vote. Another one is positive framing versus negative framing. You can never, ever shame anyone into voting. You can never say something like, well, if the Indian people would have voted earlier, then, we would have, a different governor. Or you can't say, well, you were useless last time and you didn't vote in the 2016 election, but maybe you'll vote in the 2020. If you put that negative framing on it and you shame people in it, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to be very honest. That's like a very cultural thing that's super go-to for a lot of immigrant communities. A lot of immigrant communities, including Indian communities, they shame people into doing things. If we shame people into stuff, it's not going to happen. We have to frame everything positively. We have to say, look, we have the power to do X, Y, Z. This is unprecedented times, and we have an opportunity to swing an election one way or another. Think about all the positives, think about all the hopes and dreams, and not the shame. So I think that's really important to hammer down. Another piece is power over fear. Like I said, you can't scare someone into voting either. You're not going to just say, oh my gosh, our country is doomed if you don't go vote. that's not going to convince people to vote. People are going to go, they're going to give up. They're going to go, oh, well, our country's doomed. That stinks, right? But you can help someone realize their power. You can say, look, if somebody comes to you and says, my vote doesn't matter, or I don't think my vote counts here, you could say, well, what if everyone who said the words, my vote doesn't count, what if they went out and voted? Then what, right? Help them like see that power, that they could be doing their part, right? Like that if they could be, so empowered to go vote. Some people might be intimidated by the process. They might say like, oh man, voting I've never done it before. It's weird. I don't know. You can just say, hey, it's not hard. It's really easy. And once you've done it, you celebrate them. Congratulations. That's awesome. We really appreciate you being a voter. Power over fear is always going to be great for your messaging and talking to folks. Next one, help people make a plan. Again, don't give direction without patience and grace, but when you're telling people to go vote, you want to help them make a plan. So if I tell Ananya, if I'm just like, hey, Ananya, you should go vote. Okay, bye. And then I leave, right? Like that doesn't help her. It's not helpful in any way, shape, or form. All she knows is that she's supposed to do something that she, hasn't done before and may or may not know how to do, right? But instead, if I go to her and I go, hey, Ananya, you're planning on voting, and she says, yeah, maybe I'm thinking about it. And you can say, okay, that's cool. Who are you going to the polls with? Like, are you going with anybody? I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, well, do you have a ride there? Like, do you have a car? Do you know how to get there? Do you want to come with me? We can go together. Like, we can make that happen. Help people make a plan. What you'll notice is that when people make plans in their head, they're more likely to execute them. A lot of people don't go vote because they just haven't made the plan in their head. Oh, am I going to take off work for a couple hours and go and vote? Am I going to go on a weekend if there's an early voting on Saturday? Once people make that plan, they do it. And I use this in the last 101 as well. But like, I think about it as like hosting a party, right? Like if it's Uncle Uncle's birthday, I'm not just going to like wake up and be like, well, it's Uncle Uncle's birthday. We're going to just celebrate and it's done. No, I got to invite, I got to go through his Facebook, find all his friends. I have to creepily send them all messages, send them all friend requests. I got to figure out from one of his friends what kind of cake he likes. Oh, he doesn't like cake. He wants biryani for his birthday. Cool, we'll get him some biryani, right? Like I got to think about all that stuff. And once I think about it, then I'm more likely to execute and implement. So I think that's just a really important thing to help people make plans is so, so, so helpful. All right. I think that's, oh yeah, and be inclusive of everyone, even if they cannot vote, because our vote is bigger than ourselves, right? So you want to think about like if someone says, well, I don't know if I feel comfortable voting, you could say, well, think about it. Your vote isn't just for you, your vote also represents my kids. My kids, they can't vote. They're 3, 4 years old. My kids are 12, 13 years old. Like your vote matters for them. Oh, think about it. We have people in the Odia community that have green cards right now, or that are just here on visas right now. Your vote represents them. It doesn't just represent you, right? And so make sure that people realize that their vote is bigger than themselves. So a couple of things that you can do. Obviously, we have social media. You have Facebook, use your Facebook stories, Twitter, TikTok, whatever all you young kids are doing now. And then, you could always record a video of yourself explaining why you're voting and posting it. And don't be afraid to be made fun of. You're doing more than the person who's watching. And you might inspire someone and they might follow in your footsteps. If you get one person to vote because of a video you posted on Facebook, you have done more than, all the people who might make fun of you or might be haters or trolls. Don't worry about them. Like for real, you are doing something for this country, for the world, and you should lean into that and just wash away all that other noise. Cool. Any questions before I move on? Okay. How are people feeling about stuff that I just kind of shared? Give me some reflections. Give me some, how are people feeling right now?
I got a great question. So like, let's say you want to vote for like the Green Party or Liberal Party. How do you convince others to make that political party more famous than Republican or Democratic?
Yeah, good question. So I did say one of the ground rules in the beginning is that we are going to stay nonpartisan in this space. So it's a danger to OSA if we go partisan in any way, shape, or form. It's a danger for me if I go partisan in any way, shape, or form. So we cannot talk about parties in this space, unfortunately. So I think that if there is a party that you are interested in, though, you could reach out to that party that's in your state. And so if you're interested in the Democratic Republic or Republican or Green Party or whatever party in your area, I would just Google them, find them, and they would be able to give you the best strategies for that.
Can I add just one little thing that if every eligible voter in the country voted, that, you know, the election can go any which way you want it to. So
yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I did this activity last time, but like it goes back to that 51% that we talked about in the 101, right? Like it's the same thing of like democracy doesn't work if every eligible voter doesn't go vote. You can't say, oh, the majority decided. No, they didn't. The majority, like, you know,
majority didn't vote.
Yeah, 10% of the majority aren't eligible to vote. 10% of the majority sat at home. 10% of the majority didn't know that they could register. And another 25% of the majority just, you know, had to go to work or like had some stuff they had to do, right? And so that's not 51%. That's like 40% and like 21% are deciding it. But when those elected officials make laws, it affects everybody. All 100% get affected. And so that's why it's so important that when you're talking to folks that you're letting them know that, hey, my vote is bigger than me. My vote isn't just mine. My vote represents a lot of people who are not eligible in this moment and who may not have the capability to go vote right now. There are a lot of people that want to go vote, but they can't because they have to go to work and they have to put food on the table. And I respect that 100%, right? I think that a majority of the Odia community, we're privileged. We're very privileged that a majority of us don't have to deal with that. And so we should be voting not only for ourselves, but for those community members too. So I think that's a really important point.
I wanted to add on to that is very true. I feel like this may not be representative of all teens, but in my experience, a lot of voters my age have said that it's gone two ways. Either we don't like either any of the candidates, so I'm just not going to vote because I don't like anyone, or we all know how it's going to end up going anyways, so why waste my time type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is exactly what kind of messes up. That's why there's kind of an understood end goal, like end product to it.
And I would push back on that when people say that stuff. I would push back in this way, right? Like you and I both live in the South. I get it. Like everybody knows where the South's gonna go, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, right? Like people don't realize that there are things down the ballot, right? That's why we did federal, state, and local. Right now, in 2020, both federal and state have super important elections right now. And people are like, oh, I already know how it's going to go. Well, yeah, you haven't looked at any of the state elections. I guarantee you 95% of those people have not looked at state elections. And I also guarantee you that they're just not, they don't know how much power they have, right? Like, and that's I think that's intentional. I think a lot of institutions really try to limit and try to prevent folks like us to know how much power that we have. They don't want us to know because then we can tell all those folks, we can tell every elected official. I'm going to give you all a quick example. I meet with elected officials pretty regularly on a state level in Tennessee. And when I first started going to those meetings, I first used to think, oh my gosh, these people are like, you know, elected and people like them and I want to make sure they're happy and all this stuff. And I was realizing that like, as I had those conversations, like I wasn't really getting anywhere. And one day my supervisor, she told me, she was like, you know, you vote for them, like you're their boss, like they work for you. And I started walking into my meetings that way. And I started talking to other people about those candidates that way, that like, that's my employee. And if they're not working the way I'm supposed to work, like as a manager, as a supervisor, it is my job to let them know. And when I started walking into meetings that way, I saw a lot more effectiveness. And that is coming from a southern state where I, as a brown man in this state, don't get listened to a lot unless I make a lot of noise, right? And I started realizing how much more effective it was for me when I started walking into things with that mentality. And so it's really important to do that and do so. So great point, Ananya. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, even if you like when you live in those states and you might have unpopular senators or whatever, and you say, well, you know, majority is going to vote them in anyways. Like, guess where they start? They start in the local area, so that's where you can stop them,
right?
If you don't like them. But
that's exactly right.
I did want to add, since you guys did mention like the southern states and everything, we all know like where it leans, etc. But I mean, there's no right or wrong. There's no like specific right or wrong party, obviously. I did want to mention, I know in this conversation, it's not really a big thing, but I know it's worth discussing further. A lot of in the education that we receive, a lot of times we unintentionally, like without realizing, we learn a lot of our politics from our teachers who are very biased. I know for me, my senior year, my government teacher was very obviously biased, and a lot of beliefs that I had after I had done countless hours of research, all of a sudden those beliefs that I was completely positive I knew about were kind of blurred because the person of authority that I'm supposed to go to learn is completely just like cutting those out and saying they're completely meaningless, those beliefs. So
yeah,
it is definitely a conversation that I wanted to have with someone, just like the education system.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm going to add one more before we move on, is that it's not just your teachers, it's your parents too. It's all our family, right? Like if you, uncles and aunties, if you are on this call and you know young Oriels that are in your community that have kids, please encourage them. Tell them to take their kids to the polls with them. Even if they're 3, 4, 5 years old, those kids will remember getting that I voted sticker, and it will encourage them when they turn 18 to go vote over and over again. If your kid is 11 or 12 years old right now, and they've never gone to the polls with you, take them with you. Really let them see that system, because the only reason people don't vote when they turn 18, first, second, third generation Orias, what I've heard and seen is that they just don't do it because of the unfamiliarity. If they feel more familiar with the system, they're more likely to go out and vote. So I think that's a really, really good point, Ananya. Thanks for bringing it up. All right, we're gonna do a little more practice. And so really quickly, you guys are gonna tell me what is the most effective message here. So I'm gonna start with this one. A, voting by mail is the safest choice. B, it's better to vote by mail during the COVID-19 era. C, I voted by mail even during COVID-19. I was able to get my ballot in. Let me know if you have any questions on how to vote by mail. Or D, COVID times are crazy. I'm gonna vote by mail and stay safe. What do we got? I see something in the chat. I'm gonna try and pull up the chat. What do we got? A, B, C, or D?
I would say C.
Couple of C's. Anyone have anything different than C? Going once, going twice. C is correct. So great job. Why did you all pick C?
it's more in the active voice,
Mm-hmm.
and it's letting them know that you're there for them.
Exactly. That's exactly right. You're there. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to help you out. I did it. I did it myself. It's a story of self. You know, I was able to do it. I'm here for you. We can do it together. That's exactly right. All right, next one. Okay. A, young people need to vote more in 2020 than they did in 2016 so we can win. B, my son is voting for the first time. If more young people vote like him, we can see change in our country. C, my daughter is voting today. I'm so proud to see her make a difference for our city. She said it was so easy. D, if young people don't vote, we have no chance. What do we got? What do we got? We got 2 C's. Anyone have any other different answer than C? Going once. Going twice. Yep, C again. C is correct. And the reason why is the other 3 were all about shaming, right? And we talked about it. You can't shame someone into voting. You're not going to be able to shame anybody into doing that. So great job, identified the best message. All right, here we go. A, our vote is power. Our vote is our power. Use it. B, if you don't vote, we could lose everything. C, vote like our lives depend on it. D, you fight, you vote, we win. Anybody? Anybody? We have an A. Okay, okay. Mrinali, why did you pick A?
I think it's important that you're still including yourself as part of the action in people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also just positively framed. It's highlighting the power, not the shame.
That's exactly right. It's highlighting the shower. And then, can anyone tell me why they didn't pick D? What pulled you away from D? Oh, looks like everybody's like, ooh, maybe D looks good.
It's again, it's the you fight,
Mhm.
you vote, and it's not necessarily including the person saying it as
Right.
an active part.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The other piece that I would add to that is you want to stay away, and this is something that for those of us who are a little more activisty, so all of you second generation activists that are out there doing marches and stuff like that, the words that really resonate with you in that moment are the words fight, whatever, like anything that has violent imagery actually doesn't convince people to vote. So if you say, we got to fight in order to win, that's not going to help anybody. Nobody wants to get in a fight. No one's like, oh yeah, let's go like throw down and like throw some hands and get in a fight. Nobody wants to do that, right? So if even it would have been improved if we said, we fight, we vote, we win. That would have been better, to Mrinali's point. But I would have taken the word fight out completely. I would have done something like, we march, we vote, we win, right? We something else, we vote, we win. Some sort of action that resonates that, oh yeah, I've marched before and I can vote and I will win. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you want to think about those pieces as well. So yeah, that's a great point, and you all nailed this. You guys did a lot better than I did when I was first presented this, so this is awesome. Okay, here we go. A, you should go early vote. B, are you bringing people with you to the polls in November? C, mask on, early vote, it's quick and easy. D, vote, 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 vote. Give me something. Oh, nope, don't look at that one. I'm going back here. I'll read them again just to give people a chance. A, you should go early vote. B, are you bringing people with you to the polls in November? C, mask on, early vote, it's quick and easy. D, vote, 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 vote.
We have a C, a D, and a B in the chat.
Oh boy. I did not see the chat. Okay, we are all over the place here. I'm gonna look at the chat here. All right, let us go with, I'm not sure. Okay, good. All right, so why, Bungle, why D? And I'll share my screen again. And I think that was vote, 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 vote.
Deepak?
Uncle, you're on mute.
Oops, sorry. I said regardless, either way, just vote, 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 right? So that's why I choose vote.
Okay. Who chose C? Why did you pick C?
I chose C because it's I think it's a little positive. It's showing you that it's quick and easy. Like it's an easy thing to do. You should just go do it.
And then Ananya, I think you picked B. Why did you pick B?
I chose B because I remember you mentioning that a lot of people who make plans, who start thinking about the plans about how they're going to vote, are typically the ones who go through with it. So I was thinking more along that line of in that conversation.
Yeah, so B is actually correct. And the reason why the other two are tough. So we'll start with the one things that peel people off, what we've seen for message testing for D and C, is that you're giving directions. You're like, oh, put your mask on, vote, 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 go do it. If you tell someone what to do, they're not as likely to do it, versus B, where you're helping someone make a plan. That's a really difficult one. The message testing is pretty close when it comes to B, C, and D, but B does come out on top. What about 50% or so? But there are people that it resonated with C and D for. So those of you who pick C and D, do not feel like you made a mistake. You are just in the minority compared to other folks. So yeah, we'll do one more. Quick practice here. A, I'm voting for my friend Juan, who's undocumented. B, I'm voting for my cousin Dave, who's gay. I voted for the LGBTQ community. C, I'm voting for my friend Mithun, who's a green card holder. And D, I'm voting for myself and my family. I vote for those of us who identify as brown-skinned Americans across the country. My vote will count this year. Nanya says D. D's right. And the reason why is that it's exactly right. D is right, because you use your own story. And that's a really important point, that you don't want to say that you're voting for something that doesn't resonate with you or your story, right? Like, you are voting for yourself and you're voting for your family. And you can say, like, I support these other issues, but that's not why you're voting. You're voting for you, and then you should say you should vote for yourself too. My vote's going to count this year. You guys nailed it on this message testing stuff. So a couple other things that you always want to mention is you want to mention your Flashpoint dates. So you always want to tell people when their voter registration deadline is, when early voting is happening, their absentee ballot deadline, and election day. You want to tell people about your events. So if you're hosting any sort of Odia events or any youth events in your area, let people know and tell people, hey, we're going to be registering voters at this event, things like that. And then important dates for your community. So I think you could say something like, hey, I'm just throwing stuff out there, but you could say, Saraswati Puja, we're going to be registering people to vote. We'd love for you to come out. And so make sure that you're adding that to your messages so people know, what your kind of deal is, what the purpose is and stuff. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. What questions do people have? How do people feel about this? Do you feel like you're more equipped to talk to voters? Like, how are people feeling? Was this helpful? Did this suck? Please tell me.
This was very helpful.
Right.
I've definitely learned a lot. I know with COVID concerns and everything, the norm of how we've learned to vote is definitely kind of out the window for me. So these conversations really instilled my belief that, my vote will count this year.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Anybody else? Is there anything that you all wish I would have covered a little more deeply? Anything else that you all want to see in a future workshop? I need your feedback. I need to hear from all of you.
This wasn't in like today's, but I liked the what can you bring, what can you wear? Because I did not know that you weren't allowed to wear anything that like favors one party versus the other.
Okay, well, if you liked that, then let me pull up the other slide and we can play that. We got a little, do we have time? Do we have time? 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
All right, I'll pull it up. Let me see if I can pull that up and we'll play that game while y'all are continue to tell me what else was helpful or whatever, because I want to make sure that it's on the live stream too. So.
And then this was from last time too, but I looked up voter ID and I remember you saying like they did it wrong, but in Illinois, you don't need any kind of ID to go vote.
Oh, awesome. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
so
glad to hear.
I found a website that tells you based on your state. So I'll add that up to the website once it's live. But yeah, Illinois is one of the few states that doesn't have any kind of like you don't need anything to vote. Like when I go, I don't really take anything with me. They'll ask you your name, they look it up in their system. They say, okay, you're good, you're registered, and then you can go vote.
Ooh, well, I'm really glad that last one wasn't recorded then. So glad to know, just hiding my mistakes there. I appreciate that. All right, so for the stream, we're gonna play this game really quickly. I'm gonna share my screen and we will give this game a little thing. So for the stream, my friend Shreya is going to the polls. Can Shreya wear anything that she wants to the polls? Yes or no? Those of you who played before, try your best to hold off. Maybe if it's like a minute of silence, then you all can jump in. But if you have not played this game before, please jump in. Can Shreya wear anything she wants to the polls? Oh.
Yes.
So we have a yes. Anybody disagree with that? All right. Oh my gosh. I'm going to stop clicking. I'm getting very antsy. So the answer is actually no. Shreya can wear anything except for if she wears something to endorse a party or a candidate. So for example, Shreya cannot walk into a poll and wear a Biden or Trump shirt, or Shreya can't walk into a poll endorsing any candidate or party. But other than that, Shreya can wear anything she wants. So if you are not in the state of Illinois or a state like Illinois, does Shreya need to bring an ID? I'll ask it again. Does Shreya need to bring some sort of ID with her to the polls? This is kind of a trick question now, so.
For the most part, yes.
For the most part, yes, that's exactly right. If you are not in Illinois or states that you don't need to bring an ID, you're good to go. But in most states, you do need to bring some sort of government-issued ID. So that could be a driver's license, a passport, a military ID, I think you can do like a gun ownership ID thing. I don't know what those are.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
we have
please
a quick
do.
question in the YouTube chat. Where can I find out if I'm registered to vote?
Good question. Ask them for those of you, whoever's on YouTube, what state do you live in? And so I'll wait for that answer while we go to the next. Can someone give Shreya candy to tell her, not him, obviously I've still not fixed that. Can someone give Shreya candy to tell her who to vote for? So basically they're saying, if you vote for this person, I'll give you some candy. $50-50 shot, yes or no answer. you will not make a mistake. And if anyone on YouTube wants to give it a try, give it a try.
I'm going
Also,
to say no.
No is correct. So you can't do anything in any way, shape, or form that helps influence someone's vote. So you can't say like, oh, if you vote for this candidate, I'll give you some candy. Now, what you can do is you can have you can have a whole bowl of candy and say, oh,
Oh no, looks like he has some technical difficulties. To the person that was asking the question, am I registered? How can I check if I'm registered to vote? I posted a link in the chat. You can just click there and check if you're registered. And we'll have this information on the youth website as well once it's live.
I'm back. My computer
back.
I'm back. My computer died. I'm so sorry, everyone. Are we still streaming?
You're good. You're good. We can
Okay. Oof, that is going to be funny on the stream. So yeah, Shreya cannot, we can't bribe anyone for their vote. Now, what you can do is you can have a big bowl of candy and you can say, hey, you know, come grab some candy. And while you're, you know, hey, why don't you go vote? You know, why don't you go whatever? You can do that. But anyone that walks up to that, you know, that area, they need to pick up the candy. And so like you need to give the candy to anybody, but you can't just say, I'll only give you candy if you vote for this person. And then I cannot remember the last one. Does anyone remember the last one that was on there? My computer literally just died as I was doing that. It was really funny. But while we're at it, and then did the person on YouTube say what state they were from?
No, but I have a website and I just posted it on there.
Perfect.
And then the last bullet point is, can Shreya bring anyone with her in the voting booth?
Yes, that's a good one. Can Shreya bring anyone with them in the voting booth? I'm going to start calling some names in a bit if people don't answer, put some people on the spot.
Deepak Uncle, you want to take this one?
My vote is no. Well, it probably depends, because if it's a physical handicap.
Ooh, that's a great one. So that's a great look. That's a great, Deepak, great job of like flagging yourself and catching that. Yeah, so there's special instances where you can, right? So as I mentioned before, you can bring your kids to the booth. If you have some sort of physical handicap or something, you can bring someone to the booth. And the one especially for our communities is that you can bring an interpreter to the booth. So for example, if my mom, you know, if her Odia, if she only speaks Odia, I can go with her into the booth to help interpret for her. Now, I have to take some sort of oath and toll that I won't tell her who to vote for, and that I'm only translating what's on the voting ballot, but you can bring an interpreter with you as well. So, yeah. Cool.
I know for whoever wasn't there, I know, Pratik, you had mentioned like there were specific things that you had to do if you do have a translator. If you could touch on that, I was kind of forgetting a little bit.
No, you're right. So in order to have an interpreter at the poll, what basically needs to happen is the person has to walk in who needs translation. And the first thing they have to say to the poll worker is, I need help. They can say it in English or they can say it in their native language. They could say Mora help dorkar. They can do both Odia and English all mixed together. They can do whatever, but they have to show that they have an intent that they need help from someone, and then the interpreter can jump in. It can't just be the interpreter saying, hey, I'm going to interpret for this person. They need help. Let's do it together. That's not going to fly. That person has to speak out themselves and say, hey, I need help. If they say those 3 words, then from there, the interpreter can jump in. Thanks for flagging that, Ananya. I appreciate it. Okay, that it kind of closes my presentation. I had a lot more, but my computer is at 0% and my phone is at 6, and I really don't want to go through the embarrassing shutdown of my phone on top of it. And so, yeah, I would love to do something like this again. It may not be a bad idea. I would love to hear people watching this video or whatever. Please let the social, what are we called? The social engagement
team know. Please let us know through Facebook or YouTube. I'll check the comments again. Yeah, please let us know any way you can. What you guys want to hear. Probably won't do one more voting session before election. So any questions you guys have, let us know.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then I also think I would love to propose doing some sort of debrief after the elections. Probably isn't a bad idea too.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Find a way to lead that. Sorry, as I'm like giving folks motion sickness, you all can look at all the social justice art that I have on my walls. I got my Kaepernick, stuff like that. But yeah, thank you all again so much for your time and your patience with me. And I really hope that this was informative for people.
Thanks, Pratik Bhai. And yeah, let the social engagement team know what you guys want to hear in regards to the election. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
cool.
thank you, Pratik. Thank you, Pratik and Rainy, for hosting this series of events for OSA. We're proud of you. And those who are watching, please do support our youth, and please tell your friends or colleagues or your community members to participate and help our youth. And,
yeah, and also
help encourage our youth.
Yeah, not only that, but for those of you who are eligible to vote, be a voter. Don't go vote. Be a voter. Be a voter. Be a voter. Be a voter.
Exactly.
It's so important. So, and yes, if you have any questions about voting in any way, shape, or form, send them our way. We are happy to answer them. And I'm so excited that OSA has taken this direction, and social engagement committee. Y'all are the best. We rock. Cultural committee. Excited to see what you bring to the table, but we're the best team. So, all right.
We're so proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. See y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Utkal, too.
Hi, thank you.
For social engagement in general, I'm so sorry to add another thing, but just I know you were talking about future discussions, and in light of recent events with RBG's passing and everything, I know a lot of people have been discussing gender equality and women's rights, and what does it mean for that in Supreme Court, and like what does that mean now? And so if we could discuss that at some point, that would be I would be very interested in that conversation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll add it to our list of future discussions.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we can talk about that offline. We do have the OSA Women's Empowerment, and we're talking about that getting covered over there.
We can do a collab session.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah,
I would love to. I'll be attending that definitely then.
Yep, great. Nice session, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
For joining.